Which is more difficult to accept? Ron Perlman not playing Hellboy? Rebooting a beloved comic book series? Or the CGI? On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss 2019's Hellboy. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair are the two guys who face their own monsters. First, he's been known to battle bad movie choices. It's Tim Williams.
Some dads give their kids Legos.
What does he give you?
A gun. I mean, clearly that's the proper gift, of course.
Yeah. And next up, he's here to prove that even having a giant red hand can't punch your way out of this bad CGI. He's our dapper Southern gent, Blake Fowler.
Did anyone else just have an absolute hankering for barbecue after this movie, or just only me?
You like the old school Hawaiian pig on a rotating.
Yeah, I would take it on a spit. Yeah, if you want to spit, or Southern style, Tim. I was up for either one. Much like many of the one-liners in this movie, I had to replay that a couple times to make sure that I heard it correctly, and I did. Laramy, hopefully you'll tell us who the writer on this thing was. I would be very curious to know who did that to us.
And I want to know how much was ad-libbed by
David Harbour. Was this a Robin Williams SNL skit?
That I don't know. I didn't look into.
I'm in Stranger Things. I can say whatever I want to say here.
Right.
I mean, the screenplay was by Andrew Cosby, who, crazy enough, is actually from the world of comic books. He's a co-founder of Boom. He worked for Malibu Comics. He's a comic book writer. And and going back to something else Tim and I have covered, he was a producer on Two Guns.
Oh, okay.
So
a much better movie.
Yeah,
that's a good film.
But no, he wrote this one, and then it was, and this is the other thing that gets me. It was directed by Neil Marshall, who directed one of my favorite horror movies, The Descent.
Oh yeah.
This guy directed The Descent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Laramy, you lied to me right now.
This is the guy that directed The Descent.
No way.
No. This is the same dude who directed The Descent.
No way. Okay. Well, he sent us to hell, boy. I tell you what, because it was not not good.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was okay. Sorry, let's not skip to my decision. Laramy, my bad. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I think people are going to get a good idea of where we stand, at least on our decision.
Yeah.
But we will as always try to keep this spoiler free for the first half. But yes, we are talking about the 2019 Hellboy, which was released April 9th of 2019. So yeah, there you go.
Was it or was it 2001? Because it looked like it could have been either or.
Yeah. We'll get into that CGI in a minute. But yes, in 2019, it's a reboot of the early 2000s Hellboy movies that were all done by Guillermo del Toro, starring Ron Perlman. We got a whole new Hellboy here, and it runs right at 2 hours. It was also rated R, which was a departure because the other previous two had been rated PG-13. But before we get into it too deep, let's go ahead and get into our comic book connection.
This is the comic book connection theme.
The 2019 Hellboy movie draws inspiration from several key stories in Mike Mignola's Hellboy comics. The most significant influence comes from Hellboy Seed of Destruction from 1994. That comic introduces Hellboy's origin as a demon summoned to Earth, setting the stage for much of his character development that we see in the film. Elements from The Wild Hunt in 2008 also shaped the movie's exploration of Hellboy's supernatural heritage and his place in a larger, often chaotic world. Additionally, Hellboy Darkness Calls from 2007 and Hellboy in Hell from 2011 contribute to the film's themes of battling mythological creatures and dealing with Hellboy's legacy, though the movie takes creative liberties in blending these elements. But the film does draw heavily from the comics and puts its own spin on the material, resulting in a much darker and more intense interpretation of the Hellboy universe. Now, gentlemen, were either of you... I have no doubt you're familiar with the Ron Perlman, Guillermo del Toro movies.
Sure.
But are either of you familiar with the comic?
I mean, I'll go first. In a very past tense, vague kind of thing. So when I first got into comics, someone suggested Batman and they suggested Hellboy. And so I read a few of the Mike Mignola trade paperbacks at that time. I probably couldn't tell you too many details, but I read enough to have enjoyed it. I do remember that. I do remember enjoying the stories and the mythology and all these creatures and characters that come along with it.
I was not aware until the Del Toro movies came out, or the first one came out. I knew it was a comic.
But have you ever looked into the comics? Like, are you familiar?
No.
With okay,
I feel like
which is a common answer for me on this podcast, but I'll get better, I promise.
It's almost like a cult figure at this point in time, as far as like the Hellboy comics go. Like not many. That's a very underrated for me comic book character, and it's almost an underground scene. You're like, oh, do you read Hellboy?
Yeah.
It was like, oh yeah, well, I've read a couple of things, but yeah, no, it doesn't feel like this big overwhelming thing like Superman or Batman.
Yeah, like you said, more of an underground feel. Those type of comics from like the boom of the comics in the late 80s and the early 90s, where you had all those independent characters and all like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
Like just a lot more like that. I mean, these were Dark Horse comics. It wasn't like an unknown publisher that was putting them out. Yeah, I will say I read a few. I'm not a big Hellboy comic reader. I haven't read an awful lot, but I've read a couple of things here and there. I do like, because I've always liked this, I do like that he does use like real mythology in his comics. Like there's a lot of, and we'll talk about this for some of the characters that appear in this movie. He uses a lot of like Eastern European folklore and brings in actual mythological characters, which I always enjoy when there's a touch of quote unquote reality in a comic book. So I get a kick out of that. But let's get into the cast and talk about the hits and misses, if you will, out of this cast. First off, replacing the legendary Ron Perlman as Hellboy is David Harbour, who many will know from Stranger Things or from other comic book movies. He's Red Guardian in the MCU.
Right.
I did discover that David Harbour is a big fan of the Hellboy comics. It was one of the reasons why he wanted to do this, and he was willing to sit through 4 hours of makeup in order to do it.
Wow, okay.
I'll go ahead and say it. He's not a bad Hellboy.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah, I thought he was actually he was better than I expected.
Yeah.
Yes, for a second there, I thought you said you were going to say he was better than Ron Perlman.
No.
He is not better than Ron Perlman.
We were about to have a Hellboy bracket right here inside this mini episode.
This is why you invite me, so I can bring controversy. No, but I will say, like you saying that he was a big fan, I think that comes across in his portrayal, because you can tell he's having a lot of fun with it and really enjoyed the character.
Yeah, I think he did a good job with a lot of the, sarcastic nature of Hellboy. Again, not as good as Ron Perlman, but I think it worked, especially in the more darker, gritty movie that he's in compared to the more fantasy adventure movie that the Guillermo del Toro version is. Yeah, I had no problem with David Harbour as Hellboy. Now let's talk about who I did have a problem with. Mila Jovovich as Nimue, the Blood Queen.
Like one of the least intimidating villains, I felt like. This was not... It was probably one of the low points for me in the movie was Mila Jovovich's Nimue, however you want to pronounce it. I did not feel any sense of worry or dread throughout the whole thing. Even the first time I watched it back in 2019, I can remember being like, it's not giving me a whole lot here to be concerned about.
Yeah. I mean, other than, her just throwing that plague around.
Yeah.
and again, we're going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but she doesn't do much.
No.
No,
she doesn't. She does a lot of fawning over Hellboy. Like, there's a lot of... Yeah.
I know the Resident Evil movies get a bad rep and all that, but she's good in those. Like, she knows what she's doing in those. And, of course, one of her, if not her very first movie, Fifth Element, love her in Fifth Element. Multipass.
That's why I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around. Neil Marshall of The Descent gave the same directing to these people?
Yeah.
A cast of nobodies gave Academy Award-winning performances in The Descent, probably based mostly on direction, and I've got Mila Jovovich phoning it in like Nicolas Cage looking to reclaim the pyramid that he lost to foreclosure. So it's tough for me to reckon those two things.
Well, okay, let's move on to this one, because I think I'm torn about Ian McShane as Professor Broom. Ian McShane is the same character in everything he does.
Of course.
So let's go ahead and put that aside.
For a second, I thought I was watching John Wick. All of a sudden, there's like a cut scene with John Wick in the middle of this.
Yeah. Or American Gods.
Or American Gods, yes.
Yeah.
Or what was the Western he did? Deadwood.
Deadwood. Yeah.
See, I never got into Deadwood. That's for a different time.
And even from a different movie, but he's also the adoptive dad in Hot Rod. If you're
he is, isn't he?
Yes, he is. I forgot about that.
Once again, same character.
Yeah, he really is, isn't he? Like the sarcastically borderline emotionally abusive father kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So I think y'all are in the same boat as I am. So do you like him or not?
I did not. I was not a fan of him in this at all.
Yeah, he didn't do a whole lot for me, and I don't want to get spoilery. One of his monologues towards the end of the movie didn't do much for me either.
Yeah. Talk about phoning it in.
Yeah, I was really like, you're not giving me what I need you to give me to help save the world right now.
Yeah. There was just Yeah, because again, he is taking over a role. The role was played by John Hurt in the Guillermo del Toro movies. Really, those are the only two characters that came over from the Guillermo del Toro, because all the other characters, although from the comics, so like the Blood Queen Nemu is from the comics. From the
comics, yeah.
Yeah, and Alice, who we'll talk about in a minute, and Ben, they're from the comics, but none of them were in the other two Hellboy movies. Even
at the beginning with the voiceover, when he first started, I was like, oh, please tell me he's the narrator and not a character in this movie. And then I was like, dang it. So, but yeah. I mean, he's a great narrator. Like, I would listen to him be the narrator. Yeah,
that voice is awesome, right?
Yes. He's got a great voice. Yeah.
But the character, his interpretation of the character, even though I don't know the character from the comics, it felt flat. So
I feel like John Hurt's interpretation was from what I remember, a close representation to Broom in the comics. And I don't know if they were just going for something different for different sake in this movie, or if he was like, look, I got one character I can play. That's who you're getting here. You take it or you leave it.
Yeah, they just wanted his name for being in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And even though Ian McShane as Zeus in American Gods, sorry, spoiler for anybody who's never seen American Gods.
Way to go, man.
Even though clearly he's a god, so he's immortal, it's more believable in American Gods than to believe that this dude has been around for 80 years
hunting trolls and giants.
Yeah. So all right, well let's move on. We got at least two more main characters, or at least main enough to talk about here. Sasha Lane as Alice Monaghan. Again, Alice is from the comics, but this character is kind of an amalgam of that character and another character named Annie, who was in the Storm and the Fury comic. Kind of the same, but even they are very similar characters. You know, they have that ability to, see the future and communicate with the dead. And here's my question, though. I'm not even going to ask whether you liked her as Alice or not. What did you think about her ability in terms of the dead speaking through her?
Well, it's CGI, so I don't know what the real question is.
But it's how it happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting interpretation of speaking to the dead. It's a literal speaking. The dead are talking because they're coming out of her mouth. Okay. So let me first hot take of the evening here. I thought it was cool if it had been done with better visuals. I think it's an awesome interpretation of speaking to the dead. It's visceral. It is off-putting to a degree. You're like, why would you really want to be able to do this? Like that really sells me on her. Like, you don't want to see this kind of thing.
Right.
But at the same time,
for those who haven't seen the movie, she essentially vomits up a dead person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the genie coming out of the lamp. Yeah,
it's like it's like the genie, but still being attached to the lamp. Except instead of it being like smoke, it's like
intestine looking
skin. Yeah. Intestine looking.
Yeah,
it's very fleshy looking.
It would be
all the way
cool
up to the
take.
Torso of the dead person, and then.
But then the CGI is so bad because their face is like you can tell super input. Again, if it had been done with better visuals, it's a very cool take on talking to the dead for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Blake. I think the idea and concept you're doing something different because every other interpretation is just like I changed my voice and I sound like the other person or whatever. And we've seen that so many times. So to try to do something different, I applaud them for that. But the effect should have been better.
Wasn't good. It looked like one of those dancing elf videos around Christmas time. Like it's just the face. It's just the face you can tell. It's a rough go.
I won't be sending you that video on Christmas Day of my family.
I like the dancing elf videos for what they are. I'm saying with that budget, you should not have dancing elf-esque visuals in your movie.
Right.
And then finally, we've got Daniel Day Kim as Ben Damio. You know what? I'm going to hold off on talking about his ability.
I want you to call him what I called him.
We won't spoil that yet. We'll wait on that. But again, character is from the comic books. So those who know the comic books already know what his ability is, but I will not spoil his ability because it is a reveal in the movie.
Yeah, don't let the cat out of the bag on that one. Just hold on to it for a minute.
Yeah, but what did you think about Daniel Day Kim, who I believe is Korean American? What did you think about him with this accent that he has in this movie?
I wasn't a fan of the accent. I like him as an actor. I mean, I've known him from Lost, and even he was on the Hawaii Five-0 reboot on CBS. But the accent just felt like it didn't belong.
Yeah, but okay. So here's my thing with accents. So at this point in time, Hollywood is worldwide, global enough. Can we not cast characters with actual accent, like that actually have the accent? There are people across the world with accents of every ethnicity and denomination you can think of. Find somebody that does it. So that Daniel Kim isn't on there sounding like this right here when he's trying to talk.
I get that they set this in the United Kingdom, and it was in England, but why did he have to have the British accent?
He could have been an American secret agent or whatever over there helping
or he
out.
could have been. He could have. I mean, in the comic books, he's Japanese American.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But again, he's American.
Yeah. I
don't see why he can't just speak as an American.
Yeah. And not that anything's wrong with the British accent, all British listeners. Nothing is wrong with that.
No. It's just when you're forcing it onto an actor that's not British.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because Daniel Day Kim is not British.
When he opened his mouth, it very literally took me out of the movie. Again, the first time watching it, I was like, "Oh, he's not. I don't know him as a British actor."
Right.
I had to look. No. I had to look. Is he British? He is not. Spoiler alert.
Any of the other characters I didn't talk about? What's his name? Grugot.
Yeah. Who voiced
Pig Fairy?
Who voiced Grugot? Yeah, I meant to look that up.
Stephen Graham was the voice.
Oh, okay. I was like, why does it sound so familiar? But now, okay.
Yeah, Stephen Graham, who you might know from Snatch and Gangs in New York.
Yep.
That was the voice, but the actual it was just body that stood there and got CGI'd over was Douglas Tate.
Gotcha.
who's done a lot of work like that.
Yeah,
but
Pumbaa's had a rough road.
Yeah, yeah. You saw Pumbaa. I saw Rocksteady.
Oh, okay,
so,
yeah, Rocksteady. Okay, yeah, true.
Or Bebop, whichever one's
right,
the Warthog. I forgot which one's the Warthog. Then there were all the members of the Osiris Club that are here and gone. No, I will ask you this: did either one of you recognize Merlin?
I recognize the voice. I couldn't tell you who it was.
Yeah,
the voice is
looked
incredibly
familiar.
familiar.
Yeah.
So he is Brian Gleason.
Oh, okay.
So
another Gleason.
So Brendan. Yeah, Brendan Gleason, which a lot of people will more recognize. That's his dad,
right?
And then his brother
his brother's
is
Domhnall Gleeson.
Domhnall Gleason.
Yeah.
Who played Bill Weasley in the Harry Potter series.
Yeah,
and all that. But
About Time. Here's my plug for About Time.
Oh yes, yeah.
If you haven't seen About Time, there's my. Okay, sorry, I'm out.
So probably one of the lesser known
Gleasons.
members there, but
okay.
Some people
like the Skarsgårds going on out here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that one out, and then the random. I guess you would call it a cameo of Thomas Hayden Church playing Lobster Johnson.
Don't leave him out. Yeah. As soon as I heard his voice in that first scene, I was like, I know who that is. So.
Oh yeah, no. As soon as he speaks, you immediately that's Thomas Hayden Church.
Mm-hmm.
So they know who sent you.
Yeah,
it's a great.
But seriously, like, how do you get Thomas Hayden Church for this completely random role?
I'm glad
that serves no purpose.
Every actor's got to work.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's either this or the Friskies commercials, Thomas. Like, which one do you want to do?
And I mean, he's from the comics too, so it wasn't just a random. He is this vigilante from the Hellboy comics. All right, so yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everybody that's worth talking about. I think we've talked about as much of the movie as we can without spoiling anything. So let's get at it for someone who's never seen this 2019 version of Hellboy. Should they watch it or read it? So if they haven't seen the movie, should they go ahead and watch it? Or no, we're not going to talk about should they watch the Guillermo del Toro version instead. Should they watch this movie or should they just read the Hellboy comics instead?
As someone who has read bits and pieces of the stories they used to cobble this film together, just go read them. Mike Mignola, awesome, absolutely fantastic comic book. I'm not even going to say writer or just illustrator. Like, he's an awesome comic book person in general. Read the stories and then go watch this and have a laugh for a couple of hours.
And see, I would do the exact opposite. I would tell them to watch it first, and then so that they can actually enjoy Hellboy, then go read the comics.
Be able to appreciate what you get on the back end there. Okay, I'm with it.
Watch the movie knowing it's better than this in the comics.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, no, I'm with Blake. Even though I'm not deep in Hellboy. Yeah, definitely read the comics. You're going to get a much better story out of this. They crammed so many characters into this that at least through the comic you'll get a little bit more depth as to knowing who the crap you're dealing with in each of these. More of the mythology behind it because they crammed so much into this movie.
You can tell they're trying to set up a franchise so hard.
Oh, absolutely.
So hard.
Absolutely.
They went the DCEU route of like, let's start with everybody all at once. We'll work out everybody's backstories later and bring them on later. But we're just going to give you everyone right now.
What are you talking about? Work them out later. Right. We got Alice's backstory.
That's what I'm saying.
Ben's
but
backstory.
At the very end, we're talking about getting spoiler. Like Abe Sapien's hand is like popping up at the very end.
Spoiler.
And you said we're at the spoiler part.
Not yet. We aren't.
Did you not say we had talked about all we could with? I thought we were on the spoilers. Sorry, everyone. Abe Sapien shows up at the very end for 3 seconds.
Well, no, his hand shows up.
Yeah, his hand shows up. Sorry. Yeah. Someone call me back in when we get to the spoilers.
Now playing on a cell phone near you. A show for all the manly men out there. Where guys talk about their favorite movies and what they can teach us about being a man. Featuring the coolest guests.
Murder somebody is not like killing an ant.
The most gratifying laughs.
It's Tombstone, what can I say?
And a fresh take on movies like you've never heard before.
this will be the thing that gets written on his proverbial tombstone.
We aren't here to criticize the movies you love, but to praise them for how they apply to our lives as husbands, fathers, and really all men in general. So buckle up your seatbelts, because Manly Movies is here. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast catcher. And remember, man up.
All right, so let's get into just talking a little bit more about this and let Blake finally get into his spoilers behind this. So we're going to hit Abe Sapien showing up a little bit more in a minute, but let's go with what we always start with here as we take a trip around the spinner rack and talk about our favorite speech bubble. What was our favorite quote? I'll go ahead and say Tim already stole mine.
Oh, man,
some
sorry.
dads get their kids Legos.
That was my that was my second place. That's why I did it there.
So yeah, that one was mine. So Blake, how about you?
I hinted at my second favorite with my opening with the barbecue line. It was so bad that it was good when he's talking to his partner in crime there. Are we spoiling things still? No, not yet. We'll wait on that one who he's talking to.
You can spoil. You can spoil now.
Yeah, he's talking to Chitara in that moment right there, right? Yeah. So that's great. No, my favorite quote is revenge is the only sustenance I require. That is such a metal line. Loved it. Very good. About the best part of Mila Jovovich's character, actually. So
I will go ahead and say I almost went with when she says to Hellboy, "You are a king. We belong together, you and I."
Wait, that's mine.
Okay,
that's mine.
Go ahead, Tim.
That's mine. And he responds, "We do, but it's not going to work, because I'm a Capricorn and you're freaking nuts."
Yeah, that was a good one.
Which was the only line that I actually laughed out loud at. I was like, that was a good line. So yeah.
And that goes to say, we kind of mentioned it earlier, Harbour's delivery of the Hellboy character and those lines were very good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I even loved at the end when Lobster Johnson shows up and he fanboys over him.
I love you, Lobster Johnson.
I love you, Lobster Johnson. Yeah. I mean, that was great. I got a kick out of it. I mean, but even the little throwaway lines, like when Baba Yaga is telling him they'll build a statue out of the 2,000 feet high out of the bones of your enemies. And that'll take a lot of bones.
A lot of bones.
Yeah. Of course, he says a crap ton using actual profanity. Yeah, that'll take a crap ton of bones. But, all right. So let's get into a favorite scene. So your moving panel, something that either just jumped out as a great comic scene, something that felt maybe like it came straight out of the comic itself. We'll start with you, Tim.
I have a few scenes that I felt like came out of the comics. The first being when they discover Hellboy as a little baby or the infant or whatever. Sure. So of course, that's in any kind of origin, you're gonna have that kind of scene.
You know what? That actually reminds me that there is another character that was from the Guillermo del Toro, Rasputin. Yes, Rasputin is in both.
And then the other one that I felt like was from the comic books was when Hellboy has the vision of taking Excalibur and he's got the flaming sword and riding the dragon. So that was a good scene. But my favorite scene that I also felt like came out of the comics was when Hellboy fights the giants. I thought that was one of the better action sequences of the movie because there were plenty to choose from. But that one I felt like felt very much like a comic related, or I could see that in the comics as a multiple panel spread.
Yeah, all really good scenes. The giant fighting scenes, awesome. But I'm going to go back to the one you mentioned already in a specific moment in the Excalibur vision scene. Mm-hmm. The almost video game third-person view of him from behind flying into this was a splash page comic book moment. Like I could see that being just the full 2 pages of these people littering the ground and him coming in on the dragon. That was a really, really cool scene.
Yeah, I think just to pick one scene, because I do agree with some of the stuff y'all are saying, I went with his battle with Baba Yaga, his little fight.
Yeah.
Which Baba Yaga, the actual performer, is a guy named Troy James, who anyone who watched the Flash television show also played Ragdoll.
Oh, okay.
The man is a contortionist.
Yes, I remember that.
and it just the way he turns his body, like, I mean, that looks like something that doesn't seem like a person should be able to do, and he's actually doing it. There was no CGI there, but that looks to me like panels out of a comic, just that twisting and turning of the body that Baba Yaga does.
You're talking about Baba Yaga, and I just thought it like a cool little tertiary connection. You got Ian McShane in this with a character named Baba Yaga, and that is what John Wick is called, if you remember, in the Wick movie. So I just thought that was a cool little thing.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. And I had one little moment here, although I believe there's more to talk about, but we got to get into the weird science. So I'm always about things that the plot holes or things that logically do not make sense to the logic of the movie. And there was one that hit me right from the get-go. And that is when Hellboy, we are introduced to Hellboy. He is talking to his dad on the cell phone, and he goes to hang it up, and he immediately breaks the phone. My question is, then how did he answer the phone?
Right.
How has he had that phone?
My plot hole's along the same lines. The phone has not even been answered yet. If you look at the screen, it's still got the answer or decline buttons.
I didn't notice that.
He's never even picked it up, and it happens twice.
Didn't even catch
so
that.
That's my big one. Like, I know there's like bigger quote unquote plot holes, but that really bothered me. Like, he's not even answered the call yet. He shouldn't be talking to anybody.
Yes, because he does lightly touch the phone and breaks it. But then later we have when he gets into the elevator.
Yeah.
And he pushes down and it goes down, or no, he pushes up, and then it starts to go down. And I mean, he is hammering that control panel with his big hand, and it's like that control panel is indestructible.
I mean, later on in the movie, he goes to hang up the phone with his regular hand and still breaks the phone screen. How is this man functioning in everyday life?
The continuity between his strength, especially when it comes to his big hand, I didn't like it. It didn't work for me. I mean, I get they were going for the humor with those moments, but you got to keep with your logic. Come on. Were there any other plot holes or breaks in the logic that any of y'all saw? It's very hard with a movie like this when you've got so much.
You can't say what is logic in one of these movies, you know.
Well, but again, they've got so much they don't establish. Like you were talking about, you don't get the background an awful lot. My only other thing would have been with Ben. We'll go ahead and reveal if you didn't pick up from Blake's cue earlier.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, I was good then. All right, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. That Ben is a were-jaguar.
Oh, nice. I like it. I'll allow it.
Yeah. And that apparently when he turns into the jaguar, where do his clothes go? Because
they were back on again. Because
they were back on him.
Back to human.
Yeah,
maybe they fit into like his little jaguar pouch. And then he just puts them back on afterwards. I didn't like the fact, and I can't remember from the comics, Laramy, and I apologize for that, but like his need to Hulk out essentially in order to change, like he has to be angry or in pain or frustrated, like that. That doesn't seem like a very handy transformative power to have. I mean, can you imagine asking for no pickles on your sandwich and you get pickles and you jaguar out in the middle of Five Guys? Just not very handy.
But didn't She-Hulk explain all that in her monologue in the second episode of that show? Anyway, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I digress. So yeah, that kind of bothered me. That's not necessarily a plot hole. It is a little bit of weird science that he can only use this when he's being absolutely... And that's the other thing. Hellboy's hand gently tapped the screen and absolutely crushed it. Punched Chitara in the face and did no damage whatsoever. It's a little incredible. Maybe there's more strength there than we know about.
And again, I guess you have to assume very much like the Hulk. Like Bruce Banner can't be injured because he is the Hulk.
Okay.
So, and then and then the fact that if he is of course, I know this is true in the comic books, the scars on his face, but I still have a problem with, like, why, if that was the result from being attacked and what turned him into this, wouldn't those have healed? Like, I don't know.
You need a reminder. There's always something there to remind me, and the scars are it.
Okay, there you go.
It's a great song.
Yeah. Wear Jaguars from London. Okay. Let's talk about the R rating. So they did decide to rate this one R. I guess to write off the success of Deadpool and Logan. They're just thinking, hey, rated R comic book movies are big now. Let's go for it. So it's got a little bit more of a darker, grittier theme tone to it than the Del Toro's, which, like I said, is more fantasy driven. It's a lot more colorful, very more like comic book esque. And then of course we've got more violence in this one, a lot more blood. We of course got the profanity, but does the R rating enhance this movie, or was it just making an R-rated movie to make an R-rated movie?
I think there were elements that I felt like they did just because, like, oh, it's R, let's go for it, but wasn't really necessary. I would say even if they toned some of that down, some of the visuals probably would have been a very, PG-13, a very, like, a closer to R PG-13. But I was thankful that the language wasn't too heavy on the R side. Like, it was there, but it wasn't like every other line, like a lot of, R-rated movies are nowadays. So I did appreciate that a little bit. But, going back to, like, not a plot hole, but a flaw. My biggest flaw with the movie is it couldn't find the right balance of tone. It was like it wanted to be a comedy, but it wanted to be dark, and it wanted to be scary, and it wanted to be action. And I think it tried to do all those things, but it didn't. They couldn't find the right balance. And I would even put that in with the R rating. Like, some stuff was like, we're going for it. And other stuff was like, well, you seem to tone it down there instead. So, yeah, it's very imbalanced. If I can wrap it up in one word, that's my word.
It's a good word for this movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to try and move through mine quickly because actually the rating was one of the things that bothered me the most. It's like pick a lane and then stay in that lane as far as what you want the movie to be, what you want the tone, the feeling to be. I'm a huge horror movie fan, and we watch and enjoy horror movies for the very specific reason of we can be put in the shoes and in the plight of a character and not risk any real harm or danger. And the gore and the violence that come along with that are part of that journey for you to take place, to be in that person's shoes. So the R rating is a necessity in order for you to feel afraid and feel fear, but be able to come away from it safe. And there's
what goes back to, this is the dude that directed The Descent.
That's what I'm saying. There's no point in any of these acts. So at the very end, the creatures of the fiends of hell rise up out of the ground. If we'd have had that tone the entire movie, I'm all in. Like some of the creature design, the terror,
which I will say again,
horror.
Could you imagine what Guillermo del Toro could have done with those creature designs?
For sure, yeah, absolutely. Like, again, if you just picked that and stuck with it, I'm all in. But like Tim said, you're trying to ride the coattails of Deadpool, of Logan. Guys, I even put Guardians of the Galaxy on here because, like, the soundtrack was trying so hard to be Guardians of the Galaxy.
It does, yeah.
It doesn't fit with the movie. The scenes do not match the soundtrack, and it takes you, again, another thing that just kind of pulls you out of the movie. And I was like, they could have just branded this like Guardians of the Galaxy spinoff Hellboy, because that's what they were trying to do, it felt like. So I didn't keep it PG-13. That's cool. I'm down with that. Like, you didn't have to make it R just for R's sake. And ironically enough, the scene with the most language takes place inside the church building. Kargosh or Quahog, or whatever his name is dropping F-bombs that's when most of the language occurs. So I'm not sure they knew what they were doing exactly. It's like Neil Marshall was like, here's the keys to this Ferrari, Neil. Well, you haven't ever driven anything other than a lawnmower before, but go ahead and take this thing out for a spin.
Yeah. I do have two things to piggyback off of there. One, going back to the imbalance, it feels like one of those movies that was made by committee. Like you had a focus group that was like, you got to have this. Oh, but you got to have this. And then two, I did read and look in some of the trivia that once the movie was done, the director did not have final cut. So I think that may play some into why you're like, the guy that made The Descent made this, and the studio took his draft and edited it down. So I'm sure there's I'm sure there's
always
a
common thing.
Yeah.
Good to know, Tim. That's really good to know.
Yeah. Always a common thing when it comes to these comic book movies.
Who's the studio, out of curiosity?
Lionsgate.
Okay. All right.
I know they're the distributor. I'm not sure if they're the actual...
They distribute, yeah. I don't know if they were necessarily
because are the first two Warner Brothers? Are the Guillermo del Toro ones Warner Brothers?
So the production companies were Summit Entertainment, Millennium Films,
okay.
Lawrence Gordon Productions.
So several.
Yeah.
Once again, by committee, you've got like
four
different studios
Lionsgate
making
was
the
just
movie.
the distributor.
Too many cooks in the
Lionsgate
kitchen
was
going on there.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense now, though. Yeah,
it makes us not as mad at Neil Marshall.
Right.
You're right. All right, Neil, you're good for a moment.
You're back on the good side.
All right.
Saved by Tim.
Yeah.
Here to redeem directors.
Of course, we've already talked about some of the actual real mythological connections. Of course, Baba Yaga, also a real Slavic folklore
very
character.
Cool.
Yeah. Of course, they do take a little bit of variations, but Baba Yaga is kind of the witch in the gingerbread house.
Yeah.
Like, she does kidnap and eat children in the true folklore stories. So, but let's get into what we talked about earlier. So, even though there never was a sequel, in fact, they just went ahead and rebooted Hellboy over
again, right?
This year, which I'm going to go ahead and say I have not seen The Crooked Man.
I haven't either. Apparently, it's like very low key. It's almost indie film-esque and kind of Blair Witchy from what I've read.
Like it, yeah.
So
it seems like it.
I'm interested to check it out.
Well, and I will say I am interested in the fact that it's just called The Crooked Man because that is a comic, Hellboy comic. So it could just follow that one story. So it might be a little bit more interesting to see, at least in terms of a story development. But so we get two sequel setup scenes at the end of this. We get one right as the credits are starting, in which they are in the rubble of the I forgot what it was called, but they find this tube. I don't know what you would call it, but this tank.
Yeah, tank is a good word.
Yep. Alice wipes away the plaque, and comic book fans then realize it's Abe, Abe Sapien, and we get the hand pressed up against the glass. And of course, Abe Sapien, for those of you who saw the Guillermo del Toro, was a main character in those, played by the wonderful Doug Jones in those movies. We don't know who would have played Abe for this because we didn't get the sequel. And again, all we saw was a hand.
I think it was just the creature from The Shape of Water in this one.
But again, that would have been Del Toro.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. It's Del Toro, right?
That still would have been Del Toro.
Make sure everybody knew. My bad.
And that also still was Doug Jones too. So, but yeah, so again, they're clearly setting up, like y'all were talking about earlier, an extended universe. Let's just go ahead and get all of the Hellboy characters in here, which we then see a hint of again in the end credit scene, the post credit scene, where we get Baba Yaga talking to a unseen person that we just hear the voice of. And that voice is Kochei. I don't know how you're actually supposed to pronounce it.
Sounds good to me.
Who also is from Slavic folklore. In actual folklore, he is just this like undead, I think, king who kidnaps women, especially when they are the love of another man. Like, that makes him more interested in them usually.
Okay.
And then he has to be not necessarily battled by the hero of the story, but more like outsmarted by the hero. So almost like a Rumpelstiltskin type character. But I do like in the actual folklore, he's got this thing about he hides his death, his soul, because he is a Russian folklore character. And he does it through like nesting figures.
That's pretty cool.
So he puts his soul in a needle, and then that needle is put into a twig, and then the twig is put into a rock, and then the rock is set into I don't know. I'm making this.
Yeah, no, we're with you. I was seeing where you were going.
Yeah,
right.
And then the rock is set into a chest, and then the chest is buried, under the sea, and so it's all this nesting stuff. And the old woman who swallowed the fly. Don't know why.
It's like now I know where to go find it. So that's good.
There you go. So, but of course, in the comic, she is, as the movie is implying, she is a slave that's bounded to Baba Yaga, who, of course, says that she will give him what he wants, and that's for him to finally die. So, of course, he was, I guess, supposed to be the villain of the second movie. So you would get Abe Sapien coming in as a new member of the team, and then you would have Kochi, or don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, as the villain. So what do y'all think? Like, I get this movie flopped, so they didn't make a sequel. But what do you think if this movie had spawned a sequel or a whole series? Like, what do you think could have happened?
I think you see, obviously, the team grows in cohesion. I see a movie at some point in time where Broom comes back for whatever extended period of time. They find a way to resurrect him, or he has to be around. Maybe it's the final in this franchise where the Blood Queen has come back again. I see them eventually getting back around to that storyline that happened initially in this film, and vanquishing her once and for all. And so, in all honesty, with how I saw it going, I'm not terribly upset it didn't go any further. I try not to think about it. You're making me think about things I don't want to think about right now. But
let me think about a movie I don't really want to see.
Yeah. If I have to, I will do it. Okay, for the sake of moving panels.
Yeah, I don't know like what storyline, because once again I'm not familiar with the comics. Don't know what other storylines they could go or what other villains they could use. But I do think like now they're a team, so no, that would probably be a big story arc in the second one of them still trying to be cohesive, and
there'll be a breakdown in the team, and they come back together. Yeah,
mm-hmm. And then you're adding a new, I'm sure they'd add more than just Abe Sapien. They'd probably add another, one or two, pieces as well as the movie goes on. So just that finding that dynamic. So,
well, I mean, they do, because Dr. Broom or Professor Broom or Dr.
Professor
Bruttenholm, which is his actual name. He does die in the comic books, and he gets replaced by another Dr. Corrigan, I think was her name. So they could have brought her in. And then, there's a bunch of different characters that they actually... And I would even assume that they were going to do more with Lobster Johnson. I mean, again, you
don't just have him show up. Yeah. Just to pop up for no reason.
Yeah, I don't think you have Thomas Hayden Church in that role if you didn't plan on going somewhere with him. But and even bringing in characters like Liz, I don't know.
Eventually,
I think I liked the idea of setting it up, because I think a good comic book movie should, because that's what a good comic book does, is it sets up the next story.
Sure.
But I'm not... I will admit, though, I would have liked to have seen Abe. I would have liked to have seen this universe's take on Abe. But after seeing the movie, I'm not mad at it. That it didn't happen.
We talked about like with the R rating, like you're rating this R. Are you rating R because you have something to say with that R rating? And I think, are you making a sequel because you have something to say?
Curse words.
Yeah, that literally and figuratively in this case.
Right.
Yeah. Like, are you doing a sequel because you have something else to say? This movie had nothing else to say, in my opinion. There's no reason to do a sequel. They were right.
No.
They made the right call to pull the plug on that.
Yeah, it was literally just going to be, here's a whole nother story. Like, because they've already taken care of the Hellboy story.
Mm-hmm.
So Which I mean, the Guillermo del Toro movies did that too, where they did all the Hellboy story in the first one and then told a whole new story in the second one.
Yep.
So I guess it could work because I mean, Golden Army wasn't
No, it wasn't a bad movie.
Wasn't bad.
No.
Yeah. But let's go ahead and get into it. Our final decision: bag it, stack it, or trade it. Tim, I'll let you go first on this one. What say you about Hellboy 2019?
This one I would definitely trade, and I would trade it for the Del Toro version. So yes, I would trade this one. There's a better interpretation that we've already seen, so it was an unnecessary reboot in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to 100% back Tim on this one. It's a trade it for me, which is weird because I remember in 2019 when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that wasn't bad. That wasn't terrible. I watched it again, obviously, for this, and I was like, oh, no, that is terrible. That leaves a bad taste in my mouth, much like Alice's character. So what you want to do, that fleshy taste, what you want to do, you want to trade this for Ron Perlman's Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy, or, I said earlier, just watch Guardians of the Galaxy. It's essentially the same team coming together with the rock music, all that. Or go watch Spawn. Like Spawn gives you this.
Really?
Yeah, go watch Spawn. It is what it is, and I can appreciate Spawn for what it is. This was trying to be something it's not, and that's why I couldn't get behind it. So yeah, trade it immediately.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if I can get behind you saying to watch Spawn over this. So.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I like. Okay, I got a soft spot for Spawn.
Okay.
Maybe it's because he battled Batman for a little bit. I just like that kind of thing. But anyways,
maybe yeah.
Could be.
No, I'm right there with Tim. In fact, that's exactly what I wrote down. Yeah, trade it. Guillermo del Toro did it better.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, I mean, I would even talking about other the animated movies they came out with.
Oh yeah, those are good. Yeah.
Those were really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say go check those out. You know, Blood and Iron. I know it's one of them. I can't remember what the name of the other one was, but yeah, go watch those instead because those are definitely much better than what they tried. I think this one again faulted from they tried to do too much in one movie. I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was just gonna say, you're talking too much. Even the background of Gilgamesh, that's it. Even the background, like the changeling scene. You want some pure nightmare fuel? Go watch the CGI on the changeling scene. We didn't need that. We could have said, oh, he was this person thing or whatever. It's too much. You're correct.
Which I will ask you this. Did you immediately figure out that baby was Alice?
Yeah.
You did?
I think my first thought was yes.
Okay. I don't think they I did, but I don't think that they make it extremely clear when they're telling the story.
Yeah, there's a lot of inference you have to do for sure.
Yeah, you've got to put some things together to realize that was
because I'll be honest,
the baby was Alice.
I almost rewound it to see if I missed something before that. But because we were on a kind of a time crunch,
that's the thing. That's what I like. The direction, like there's such a quick, like we're talking about this, and now we're talking about this, and back to this, and this.
Yeah,
and so that's what I get that. Like,
yeah. They weren't hiding it. Like they do say it's Alice.
They're just not helping you at all.
But yeah, if you're half watching, you all of a sudden are. What's going on? Like what?
I didn't say I was half watching it.
You weren't fully invested in this movie, Laramy.
I might have been on my phone a few times. I'm just
Yeah.
Did I fall asleep halfway through? Maybe. It's possible.
And woke up and felt like you missed nothing?
Yeah. I was like, okay, I know exactly what we're talking about.
No, let's just... Look, again, I like David Harbour. Let's just be glad that he now has the role as the Red Guardian. And
Is he good in that?
He was good in...
Is he good as Red Guardian?
Black Widow, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Black Widow, and then we're going to get to see him
good
in
Brave New World.
The Thunderbolts too.
I said I probably won't be partaking in it, but I wish nothing but the best for David Harbour. I like him as an actor, so that's good.
And then I'm sure we'll see him in this last season of Stranger Things. Him with the 35-year-old children.
How are they going to do that? I hope somebody's covering that somewhere. How that's happening.
I think it's supposed to be a time jump, which they have to at this point, like 10, 15, 30 years later. No,
these kids have 9 to 5s and like 3.5 children at home with a white picket fence and a dog. They can't be saving, from Vecna anymore. It's not high school. Anyways.
All right. Well, our final segment here is recommendations. So clearly in this case, we're going to recommend something other than Hellboy for you. So not something to pair with Hellboy, but maybe something better you can watch or read. We'll even discuss that. So we've already said that you should read the Hellboy comics, or Blake and I did. Tim said watch the movie, but we already recommended that. So let's talk about other things. I'll go ahead and jump in here. If you want something very similar, something that still has that kind of dark, mystical storyline with more of an anti-hero character, and even though this movie came out a good decade before, it has much better visuals, then go watch Keanu Reeves in Constantine.
Come on, man. I'm supposed to be the Constantine guy on here.
I know, which is why I wanted to speak first.
I've got it written down. I was like, just go watch John Wick and Constantine. Yeah, it's the same story essentially. I mean, the origin's not the same, but it's like battling the demons of hell, and like Baba Yaga is essentially the devil, the boogeyman that you're fighting against. Like, just go watch Constantine. People give Constantine a bad rap. It's a great movie. Just go watch Constantine. Yeah.
And Blake and I have covered that on the show, so go back into the archives and check that one out.
Right. Thank you.
All right. So was that yours, Blake?
Yeah, it literally is mine. And I even wrote down I know we talk about Baba Yaga. Like, Constantine, I'll say it again. I think I said it in an episode, has one of the best visual, physical interpretations of the devil I've ever seen on film. Like the choices they made.
Well, Peter Stormare.
Yeah, right. Correct. Yeah, just the acting alone. But to go the all white suit with the tar dripping, great. That alone is worth the price of admission. So just go watch Constantine.
Yeah. All right. How about you, Tim?
I'm gonna go a different route somewhat, but I liked your Guardians of the Galaxy, Blake, because I do kind of feel that. But one that I would even say is even closer, like what this movie wanted to be, even though it's not my favorite of the MCU movies, but I do see a lot of correlation, and that's Thor Ragnarok, because I would rather see Kate Blanchett than Mila Jovovich. There you go. As the evil queen. I mean, like, Kate Blanchett was the best part of that movie. I'll just go ahead and say it. But the humor and, it was still not as, I still don't think Ragnarok was well balanced, but it was better balanced than this. That would be the one that kind of comes to mind. It does give some Lord of the Rings type of feels here and there.
Yeah, okay.
But, that's totally different storytelling and much better movies. Yeah. Thor Ragnarok kind of stuck out especially when you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. I was like, oh, there's something else in there that I'm thinking of, and it was Ragnarok. So.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because you talking about that, there was a connection that I was making as I was watching it, is that the feel of the movie, especially as we've talked about the jumping from one thing to the other, and there being some sort of disconnect. Did it not remind you a little bit of Ghost Rider?
Oh, okay. I could see.
I mean, obviously we don't have the whole origin part necessarily, but that
the stylistic choices of it and the directing of it. Yeah, I can see that.
Especially towards the end there, where Ghost Rider or Johnny Blaze, whichever, has to face off against the different, just having that where now we've got to face the, Baba Yaga, or no, now we've got these giants, and
we didn't even really talk about the anticlimactic fight, quote unquote, fight against the Blood Queen and Hellboy. Like they stand there and talk for a second, and he just chops her head off, and that's it. It's all over.
We talked about how she doesn't really do much.
Yeah, it was very disappointing
and she doesn't. Yeah, the big battle is with the pig.
Yeah.
And then she just tries to convince him to join her and has him pull out Excalibur, and I don't know the comics that well. Do they do it where he's a descendant of King Arthur?
I don't know enough about the lore to know that. I don't. I didn't like it.
Yeah, that just seemed way out there.
Yeah, it didn't
to make him
didn't feel good for me.
that he's like was he like the great grandson or grandson of King Arthur?
He's essentially the guardian of the galaxy, like I've been saying all along now.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. This is our last episode of 2024.
Hey,
so we'll return.
Happy New Year!
Return right at the beginning of 2025 with a one shot. But yeah, we've completed 2024. Here. This episode will actually release right before New Year's Eve, so we are right here at the end of 2024. But thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you Tim and Blake for talking through this wonderful. We got to come back and do the Crooked Man and see if it got any better rebooting.
I'm down.
Rebooting the franchise. But thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Divide. From drink to scream, the legends stay.